Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host, Valerie, and sometime co-host Ms. Purrington and Mookie. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our advice column, Rochelle Takes on Comedy. We've got a festivals page and our FPIA page where you can see the history of the contest. You can keep up with us on Instagram at Comedy Wham and TikTok, or on our Comedy Wham Facebook page. And of course, we're best known for our events page for live shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW. If you're a comic in those cities and want your show featured on the calendar, go to the events page and click Submit a Show to complete the short survey. Tag us on your Instagram stories and we'll share your show promo. Looking for ways to support all these resources we provide? You can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Search for Comedy Wham on Patreon and check out our subscriber perks. Now let's get back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the Podcast Project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today we are talking to somebody who got her start in comedy in Boston. She's been on Kill Tony, and her episode is 512, which is ironic because that's the Austin zip code, or not zip code, area code. And that her opening, well, actually, both of her jokes were absolutely killer. She is the Austin roast battle champion, and you wouldn't even know it by how kind and just demure she is. And I have to say, because I have a teenager, one of my favorite roasts from the championship was the one about how your opponent was like a Lego, except not like a Lego because you could step all over him.
Oh, yeah.
So I love that one. You've seen her on Mutiny Radio Comedy Festival and Las Vegas 420 Cannabis Comedy Festival in 2021. And she is one of the newest contributors to the Comedy Wham writing team. So we're super excited, and we're super excited to have her introduced to our audience. And now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Holly Johnston.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. You did your homework. Wow.
I did. I do annoying amounts of research.
No, that's great. I appreciate it.
And then I trap it all in random places. And, I might see you a year or two from now and I'll say, remember when we talked about the Lego roast? Yeah. It's so funny, and I can't wait to get into the whole roasting because, I've watched some of your sets that you've posted on YouTube, and even watching the roast, it's like, okay, we've got to figure out where this comes from. Yeah. And layer that on top, and I didn't talk about it, but I researched it. It's on your homepage that you majored in psychology. Yeah. So it's like, okay, she's figured out how to roast people, really get there. Yeah. Anyway, Holly, I always start with an icebreaker question, and that is one word to describe your past.
One word to describe my past. One word. I'm going to think about this for a second.
Sure.
One word to describe my past. I'm going to say spontaneous.
Ooh.
Because I've done a lot of, different things throughout my life that don't necessarily all, go together.
Yeah.
But I'm the type of person that, I'll say I want to do something, and my biggest pet peeve is when I talk people's ears off about how I want to do something and then don't do it. Oh. So I'm very much if you hear me talking about this, expect that in the next couple of months I'm going to do it.
Ah, wow. When you were growing up, you grew up in the Boston area, or?
So I grew up in a suburb outside of roughly about 50 minutes away from Boston, okay. So almost an hour away from Boston. I grew up near Framingham and Worcester, where I was probably closer to those cities in Massachusetts. I grew up in kind of it was like a suburban, very small town feel. That kind of vibe.
Did comedy play a role in your life growing up?
Yeah, so growing up, my dad was actually a stand-up comedian.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. That doesn't happen very often that I talk to somebody who's got a family.
Yeah, no, my dad was always the funny one. He was always the one that would come home with like funny stories, like from his business trips, and like he was always making everybody laugh. Very creative, always wanting to do, kind of getting me and my brother to do creative stuff. Like when we went on road trips, instead of, we didn't have like the car TVs, we did improv games. My dad would be like, "Oh, we're gonna do this game where you have to interview somebody. You just published a book," and we would just make it so silly and goofy.
Wow.
Those are like some of my best memories of just like how goofy my whole family could be, and how my dad really like encouraged that, like that creativity and that silliness. And yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Because I like to think that as a parent, I try to encourage the silly in my child. Because it's important. Life's stressful enough. Be silly.
Yeah. My dad, like, he was just always the type of dad that was very, he was very in our life. Like, both my parents were very in our lives. But, like, my dad was, like, the type of dad that, like, other kids would see and start to, like, gravitate towards when we would go camping and stuff. Because they're like, oh, this guy's, playing soccer. And, he was, like, everybody's father figure. Like, my brother had friends who, like, would be more, they would always, like, we had, like, my brother had a few friends, and we joked that they were only friends with my brother because they wanted to hang out with my dad. Like, he was very much like... And my mom, I would say my sense of humor also comes from my mom, but I think that's where I get the roast, the bluntness, the brutal honesty, like the let's get real here type attitude. Like, my mom is very much cut to the chase, there's no, let's not beat around the bush. Like, that's kind of her style.
Interesting.
Yeah, she's an Italian American, so she grew up, with that kind of rough, tough love. So I think that's kind of a blend of where my sense of humor comes from, with that, like, that wit is from more like my dad's side, and the creativity, and then my mom's side is like the honesty. brutal honesty. Yeah.
That's actually one of the, you talking about your dad, I just keep thinking about your opener in that Kill Tony episode about, well, where's dad going to sleep?
Yeah.
Such a great joke.
Thank you.
Great joke. Okay, so I'm curious, you talked about your dad was a stand-up comic. You also mentioned that he would take business trips. Was he like a full-time stand-up comic, or is it one of those things where he enjoyed doing it on the side from his work?
So it was very much a hobby when he was younger. So by the time he had probably reached like his 30s, I think, he had kind of stopped doing it.
Okay.
It was something that he wanted to be an actor when he was younger. So he took a lot of, like, I think he took some acting classes, some like modeling class. Like, he was very much like, he wants to be in the entertainment industry. And then, he did stand up, but then once he got like a real job and was making like a real living, and he had a family, he had us, he told me that he sort of like, it stopped making sense to he never really fully pursued it, like as a real career. And that's what he'll tell me is like, he's like, yeah, you've already taken it so much further than I have. Like, I would do a few shows a month, but I didn't do like mics every night, and I didn't tour, and I didn't go to like places, not saying I tour, but like I don't like go to different cities for it. So he kind of stayed in the Boston area. So yeah, it became more of a hobby, I think.
Yeah, because I guess you'd have to be kind of careful as a parent. Like, if you had this dream in your 20s and you had to set it aside because it didn't make sense, and you see a child pursuing it, like, push them because it was your dream and you want them to live the dream versus, the respectful encouragement and praise.
Yeah, I I don't think my parents like push me to pursue it. They definitely support it though, which I'm very lucky to have that, because a lot of people will talk about how they're very much discouraged from being, you know, or they're told like, oh, get a real job. Like, I feel like I kind of slid under the, I don't know where I was going with that, but I feel like I didn't have to go through that because my dad kind of gets it, you know, because he went through this. And my brother's a musician, so both of his kids are, you know, taking these crazy art and I could tell sometimes it's frustrating, you know. I think deep down my dad's just like, just kind of get a real job, start, you know, making some money. But I think he understands, like, I think he gets it. Yeah.
But you didn't pursue it initially, or maybe you did. Let's talk about Holly now and stop talking. I understand your brother's friends now. They just want to talk to about your dad and hang out with your dad. But let's talk about Holly. You went to college.
Yeah.
And you pursued a psychology degree, got the psychology degree. Was stand-up percolating at any point in this?
So I'd actually done stand-up before I went to college.
Oh, gosh.
Once. So I'd always been kind of like, I had a group of friends that kind of knew that I was funny, that I would make them I'd have them in tears laughing. I would make up characters. I would vent about stuff. You know, I was that friend. And for the rest of the people, like, no one else, like, I wasn't that well known. I was kind of an average kid. I wasn't like totally like excluded or isolated. I kind of had I was kind of that kid that bounced between groups, but never really belonged to like a clique. I could get along with like a lot of people. But yeah, so my senior talent show, they had a talent show for all the for the graduating class, and I kept having like this feeling that I really wanted to try stand-up comedy and do it for the first time in the talent show. So I told my dad, I said, I really want to write some stand-up for this talent show. And he got so excited, and he pulled out this book, Judy Carter's Comedy Bible from the 90s, and he's like so excited that, you know, we had this thing to bond over, and he's like, let's write a premise, and let's write you know, he was, you know, and I wrote a bunch of jokes about my teachers, people that weren't nice to me. Just
the beginning of the roast?
I would say that was honestly my first roast battle. If I had to, I said some stuff that, like, I don't know how I got away with it because I was graduating. Like, you know, what are they going to do? Kick me?
Right.
I mean, it was clean. Like, there was not, there was some stuff that was a little dark that I look back and I'm like, yeah, I probably wouldn't say that again. You know, I didn't truly know how to form. It was like my first ever set, and like I was talking about how I like failed driver's ed and how like this girl made fun of me, like, you know, all this stuff, and it was the first time anybody had really seen me do that. So I got like a standing ovation, like people.
Holly.
It was probably the most important and only memory I have of high school. Like, it was just so like, whoa, what is this? And then, and people will still bring it up, you know, like I still am friends with classmates and stuff who like, they'll message me and be like, oh wow, you're doing stand up. And like, I've definitely like, I remember like talking to classmates and stuff, like a couple, I think when we were in college and we'd go home for the holidays or whatever, and I would see people and they'd be like, remember when you do stand up? And that, like, it's that.
Wow.
And I wish I had the tape. I
was
can't
gonna say,
find
you're
it.
young enough that it's got to be recorded.
It's recorded somewhere, but yeah, I have no idea where that tape is, but that was really the beginning of my stand up career.
Wow.
that feeling of like, whoa, everyone's, you know, like all these things that were like painful for me or embarrassing for me, and now everybody's standing up and like, and the popular kid, I'm making the popular kids laugh. Like, it was just like this superpower. Like, it sounds so dorky to say superpower, but like, it was just this moment of like, whoa, and like, and I was so nervous to do it. And when people announced that I was doing it, people were so confused because I was kind of like a quiet kid.
Yeah.
So they're like, and now Holly's going to be doing some stand-up. And everyone's like, what? Wait, what? Like it was, and I brought up my little cards and I was just like, I can't imagine how bad my delivery must have been. But, oh, God, it really...
That's your superpower, Holly, is like just being kind of this low-key, sneak in, and then just, the writing gift that you have from those games playing in the car with your dad, and your dad helping you. Gosh, that Judy Carter, she's still kicking.
Yeah.
As like a teacher, and yeah.
Yeah, I actually she came out with a new book. It's like a modernized version of the one from the 90s, and I gave my dad that as a Christmas gift because, he had introduced me to the first one. I said, oh, now it's your turn to write stand up again. And, like it was I didn't expect to talk this much about my dad on this podcast.
I'm sorry, it keeps going back to dad.
I don't know why. I mean, shout out.
So your first stand-up set, standing ovation in high school. Did you do it again in college? Not necessarily in that setting, obviously, and where did you go to college? Because were you even anywhere near where you could perform?
So I went to Hofstra University. I was 25 minutes away from New York City. Did not do one open mic in New York. And to this day, I was like, I had room and board. I could have just gone taken the train in every single weekend and gone to do and I never did because, I was so focused on, being in college. I joined a sorority. I did the, I was just really busy with I was convinced that I was going to be a neuroscience researcher. That's what I thought I'd be doing with my life. But I always kind of kept that creative muscle flexed. I took a lot of TV writing classes and screenwriting classes. So I wrote some screenplays. I did a spec script for Family Guy, and that was kind of it was kind of stand-up adjacent because it was, I'm writing jokes and the whole class is reading it and, responding to it. Yeah, what else was... Oh, yeah, but I did... my sorority kind of knew that I was funny. So every year they did this sorority awards thing and I would always get secret comedian. That was my award because I would say things under my breath that one person would hear and be like, oh my God, can you say that louder? I would just quietly make jokes. So it's you had to be really paying attention.
I'm so glad that you're young, and I don't mean to keep going back to this either, that that's the universe sending you messages.
Yeah. And I also noticed that, I was always kind of the comic relief, when something really stressful was happening. I took this, biology class, and I was always, just talking about these, just sharing these ridiculous stories about my weekend with, my classmate. I had this friend group, and we would, study together, and I would just be like, oh, you're not going to believe what happened. And they would just be laughing and it was, and they were just so... people in those types of classes are just one track mind, very focused on what grades they're getting and what everything is just dedicated to that, to getting that high score and what they're doing after, it's so competitive. And I just realized right away that I'm not this person. I don't care this much about dissecting a fetal pig and knowing all the arteries. I was I am not this. But I would always make everybody laugh. And I had a roommate in college who I'm still best friends with. That when I would get really stressful, I would always make her laugh, just goofy. We would just make up goofy stuff. And for some reason this is coming to my mind, so I guess I have to share it. But I would do this thing, I would call it the chair song, and it would just be, we had this wobbly desk chair in our dorm, and it would just be I can't believe I'm sharing this, but
I love it.
It would just, this is going really deep into the files here, the archives. But it would just be me in this chair, and I would just be making a beat out of it because it like would kind of like make like a rocking sound, and then I would just like start rambling off everything that was stressing me out, like, oh, and I have 3 finals, and like, and we would crack each other up, and like it became a thing where it's like, oh, is it a good night for a chair song? Like, just all that, like, that's what I love about college, just all that, like, that's like all that other stuff turns out to not have mattered, like what grade I got in biology and how, you know, whether or not I passed this exam, and it was all the stuff on like dealing with stress and dealing with how do you deal with like, you know, something negative happening, and like how do you process, like, you know, that's really what I got out of college when I think about it, is like learning how I deal with the stress and stuff.
Since you had kind of that natural gift for being funny and silly and breaking tension, did you, when you graduated, and you have an official psychology degree, right? That's your that was your major. Did you find having those kind? Okay, I was a wannabe psychology major. I went through like 2 years of psychology classes, and I found them very fascinating. And I think that laid a foundation for why I love this podcast, because I love to kind of dig into and, you know, figure out what makes people work. Did you find that was like a really natural complement to your silliness and your sense of humor?
I don't know. I was always just like fascinated by the brain. Like I still am. Like I listen to like neuroscience podcasts. I'm such like a science nerd. Wow. I love like explaining things in terms of like neurotransmitters. I don't know. It just does something for me. Just like, I don't know why. It's kind of just like, I'm just like very much a person that when I get into something, I dive in with 2 feet. Yeah. Like I get very into it, and I'm like, this is me now. This is the new me. And I feel like I kind of did the same thing that I'd done with stand-up with psychology, where I was like obsessed with it, and I was reading books on the brain, and just, you know, I was very, I just get very passionate about things.
Sure, yeah.
Whether or not it complemented my sense of humor, I don't know. I think what I've learned to do, I think what has helped me is like I've learned how to do research, so that kind of helps with like, I don't know, with like roast battles and stuff, I guess, like thorough research. Yeah. But I don't know if they're really like that connected. Yeah. Because I don't really feel like I like psychoanalyze people, or I don't know. That's something I still haven't figured out, I guess.
Because one of the things that I found, but this is pre-pandemic, roast battle would sometimes come through Austin, and they would pair like best friend comics to roast each other, and they were just so biting and incisive, and you knew it was because they knew each other. Yeah. Like they knew what each other's pain points were. And I don't know enough about like this roast battle championship that went on last fall to know if the pairings were intentional like that too, or if they were more random.
I've definitely roasted people that I've like known nothing about, and roasted people that I was really good friends with. Yeah. And there definitely is that more fun energy when you like know the person and you know like, but also like I always ask them like, is there anything off limits? Because sometimes people share stuff, you know, and they don't want that broadcasted to the whole audience. So the way we do it is like we send each other a list of flaws, embarrassing moments, just anything that we're ready to laugh at. Essentially, like, hey, this is me, I'm this happened to me, just anything that you're like, this is fair game, you send them in a list, and anything you don't want them to bring up, just kind of be like, hey, listen, I'm not ready to make a joke about I'm not ready for this joke or whatever.
Okay. Well, I've went way fast forward, but I need to go back because I want to know, what did Holly do after she graduated from college?
Okay.
And what year was that? Because your start in comedy is really, really close to COVID.
Yeah. So I graduated college in June of 2019. Oh. So, yeah, right before the world shut. I was in New York. I was supposed to move to New York. I was going to get this job as I'd interviewed for a job as a research assistant at this, like, I forget. I think it was at a university. It was in, like, studying, like, epilepsy or something. I was going to get an RA job in New York. Ended up not getting that job, not getting the apartment in the same day. So I was like, cool, I'm going home. So I went home. I was very stubborn about it. I went home kicking and screaming. I didn't want to move back in with my parents. And when I did move back in with my parents, I got a job as a research assistant working with people with, it was a Alzheimer's dementia research study. So I got a job in my field. And then I started doing open mics that summer after graduation because I had gone on this, like, I went on a music festival road trip with some friends from college, and I was just the whole week just making them laugh and, you know, being myself. And they were, like, encouraging me, like, oh, you really, and I was like, I'm thinking about doing an open mic, and they were like, you gotta do it. Like, you know, after this weekend, like, I totally, you know, they were giving me a lot of support. And one of them actually came to watch my first open mic. He had lived in the area or whatever, so he came to watch it. Shout out Tommy. I don't know. We don't, like, know each other that well anymore, but thanks for coming to my open mic.
Was it in your hometown, or was it in Boston?
It was in Jamaica Plain, which is a part of Boston, at this, like, hipster bar called Midway Cafe. And it was a lottery system, so you had to put your name in the bucket. And yeah, that was my first open mic, and it went really well. And then the ones after that were, you know, what you'd expect for an open mic.
How did you go into it, preparing it? Because you're used to a lifetime of just making your friends laugh off the cuff without any preparation, just the material that your environment is handing you.
Well, I think it's also worth mentioning that I've always been a writer. So, like, yeah, I make my friends laugh off the cuff, but I've also, like, written, like, I would write these vacation journals when, like, my family would travel, and it was just all the things that, like, I had been observing the whole time during, like, I remember this one time where my family went to, I think we went to I think it was Aruba. Yeah, we went to Aruba, and my parents didn't know that the whole week I'd just been documenting the trip, and then on the flight back, I read it out loud, which, looking back, so annoying to everybody around me. Like, just
shut this kid up.
No respect for. It was like it was a night flight too. Like, these poor people.
God.
Like, yeah. I didn't have that awareness back then. Looking back, not a great thing. But I remember reading this thing aloud, and my parents were just in tears laughing, you know, because they were just, I was basically just making fun of everything that happened. And a lot of it was like, Dad got drunk and passed out on the beach, like, just, like, embarrassing things. And I'm just reading it out loud on a plane. And yeah, so I was always, like, writing stuff. I would always write stuff that was funny and kind of go off the cuff. So I guess I had always done both. Yeah, so it wasn't.
So did you walk in with, like, written jokes?
Oh yeah, I'd rehearse. This is the most preparation I'll ever do for an open mic. I wrote a set, like, weeks in advance, and, like, would record myself doing the set, and, like, you know, had my little set list. I wonder if I still have that set list. I'm sure I do. I keep everything. I'm a hoarder. Yeah, so I would just, I bet I still have the recordings of, like, me in my room trying to rehearse my set. My first ever opener was I have a BA in psychology. It stands for barely anything, which is the type of job I'm going to get. It was something so dumb. And yeah, but yeah, it ended up going really well. And I was like, you know, that feeling when you first, do the first open mic, and I had adrenaline. I was like, I just want to keep doing this. Yeah, and then I met a fellow comedian slash YouTuber, and started dating him, and then we dated for like 2 years. So that was like the foundation of like my career had just started in comedy, and my relationship had just started. So yeah, wasn't such a bad thing to go home after all.
Yeah, I guess not. No. Okay, so 2019. And then 2020, where do you feel you're at when everything shut down?
Okay, so when everything shut down, I was like 6 months into comedy. Hated my day job. I just hated going into an office. I hated the environment. So yeah, when everything shut down, I was pretty restless and like upset that I wasn't going to be able to go out and do mics. But I ended up overcompensating more than I feel like some people did during the pandemic, because I was so determined that to keep my pace, to not lose my momentum during the pandemic. So I did a lot of like what I like really, looking back, I'm really happy I did all this. I force myself to write every day. Like, I was like, no, I'm going to write. I'm going to listen to my sets. I'm going to find stage time wherever I can, even if it's in like a backyard in 2.5 hours away. Like, I would go wherever there was stage time. And I did a lot of sketch comedy with the person I was dating, because we would write comedy sketches together. So that kind of flexed the stand-up muscle. Yeah, and I would write down all of like the topics that I wanted to expand on or work on, and I would put them on flashcards, and I would draw a couple a day and be like, okay, these topics, this is what I'm going to write about today. And I would force myself to, I was very like, I had to have that structure, because if I didn't, I would go insane.
Yeah. It's like, what is that? Is it The Method? Like, there's this whole like culture, it's kind of a culture, but there's this book, and there's this. It's all premised on you have to practice your art form every single day, and there's a whole workbook for doing that, and it sounds very much like you forced that upon yourself.
Yeah, I took stand-up online classes. I took like a virtual class with this guy in Boston. What was his name? Oof, I can't remember.
Clearly an impression was made.
Oh no, he helped me a lot with like those first, getting started and stuff. I think his name was Jay. I'm picturing him. I remember him. But I'm just like I'm a very stubborn person, so like I was just so angry about the pandemic. Obviously, that's not that crazy, but I was just like, this is not going to take away from my progress. And I wrote a lot of stuff during the pandemic, and just like overcompensated any way I could. I did Zoom mics, which those are awful.
Yeah.
I hated them so much. And then there was kind of like comedy speakeasies at one point, where it's like, bars that weren't supposed to be open were having a couple of selected comics, giving them, heads up, 7 p.m., you might want to swing by, that kind of, as the pandemic went on. Obviously not in the beginning, but yeah.
Huh. Okay. All right. Well, we're at about the midway point, so I think this is a good spot to do our card game, and then we will pick up with what got you to Austin.
Okay.
So pick a card and I'll read it off. Oh, or you'll read it.
Oh, should I read it?
Well, sure, you can read it, and then you'll answer it.
Okay. A decision someone else made that affected my whole life. Ooh, what a good question. Decision someone else made that affected my whole life. Decision someone else made. I mean, I can think of a couple. I don't know if I'd say whole life. It's a good question. There's a lot of, it's a very loaded question. Decision someone else made. I want to say my parents divorced, but I feel like that only happened later in life, so I don't know if I'd say that affected my whole life.
Yeah.
A decision someone else made. Let's see. Been through a few breakups.
Yeah, that is a tough one. Because I'm trying to think, how would I answer that?
Decision someone else made that affected my whole life. I guess I could say, going back to my dad,
Oh, Dad.
I guess I could say that, like, my dad's decision to not pursue stand-up, to have, like, a stable job and, like, you know, so that we have, like, you know, supportive for, like, the family.
Yeah.
I guess I could say that. But I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Decision someone else had affected my whole life. I don't know. I guess just, like, the choices my parents made, because, you know, if it wasn't for them making good decisions about their lives and giving us good childhoods and giving us stable upbringings, then, like, I couldn't have gone to college, gone to pursue liberal arts and, you know, all this stuff that extracurricular I had too much coffee today, activities. So I think, like, yeah, I think the way they lived their lives, I couldn't have had all the opportunities that I would have.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't have to be read as a negative thing, because that's where I finally settled on an answer was a negative. And I'm like, no, because it sounds like in your case, like I just go back to the road trips. If you're playing these silly improv games, you know, nurturing that has affected the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Should we do question 2?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh God, this is so easy. At a party, you'll find me.
Okay, at a party, let's see, probably, I'm not like a big, like, I'm outgoing in a way, but I'm not like the very extroverted person who's, you know, throwing the dance party or anything like that. I'm a terrible dancer. No rhythm. But I'll be the person if there's like a fire, like if there's like, you know, the inside of the party where everyone's kind of like more energized, and then there's kind of like that little hangout section where it's like everyone's kind of hanging out by like the fire on the patio. That's where I'll be. I'll be out there just talk. I like when you can have conversations during a party. I don't like when it's all just noise and it's all, you know, loud music. And I'm definitely the person that, like, you know, because I like getting to talk to people that I wouldn't normally get the chance to talk to. Like my roommate, she threw some great parties at our house. Shout out Mimi Meyer. She, like, unbelievable host. We had these, like, great Halloween parties and birthday parties, and I always, like, loved how we had the backyard with the patio and the fire going as, like, party spot A, and then the inside with, like, you know, somebody DJ'd and had the dance party and all that going on. That was, like, party B, so you could kind of switch between both of them, and I liked that because I got to know a lot of different people at those parties, and that was a good bonding experience.
Cool. All right. Well, for me, it'll be wherever the cats or dogs are. That's where you'll find me at a party. Because, I don't know, I love talking to people one-on-one, and I would do that at a party. Try to find somebody and see if I can make a one-on-one connection with them. But I'm terrible at, like, the socialization in groups. I'm just awful. I'm an observer. Yeah. I will sit in a corner and happily observe, like, the dynamics. It goes back to my junkie days as a psychology major for a brief period of time. I just love watching the psychology of people. Oh, he's hitting on her, or she's not into it, or, you know, these two are just partying it up like crazy people. That's my thing, is I'd love to just observe. And people will naturally, some people will think, oh my God, you're such a weirdo. Because you're happier just observing rather than talking to somebody.
Yeah, people that are like, that rely on other people all the time, they don't get that. Like,
Yeah.
I get the fly on the wall thing. I
Yeah.
definitely, I get that.
Yeah.
Did you answer the other question too?
Oh, for me, when I thought about that question, a decision that somebody else made that affected my whole life, there's not a whole lot, but I know that there was one thing, and I had a joke 'cause before COVID. I was doing comedy myself, and I made a joke about this. That when I was in junior high, I tried out for the talented and gifted program, and I didn't make it, and they didn't do interviews, so the only thing they really could judge by was my last name. And so I've always been like bitter about that I was discriminated against, because it was a small Texas town, all whites, no diversity at all in the town. And I was always embittered by that. And it just made me work that much harder to, graduate near the top of the class and always do really well in school and excel. And I ended up writing a joke about how, it really motivated me to get my revenge. My punchline was, it really motivated me to get my revenge, to get a mathematics degree. And that, it ends on, I will fuck you up with a protractor. It was a really stupid punchline, but I still like it. And I love doing that joke because how many jokes do you know that have protractor in the punchline?
I can't name any
See?
right now off the top of my head.
So anyway, that's mine, because I think my parents did the best that they could, and I'm here, and I'm happy to be here, so whatever.
What was your talent that you were trying, like, if you were in the talented and gifted program, what do you think, like, you would have been in there for?
I guess I hadn't thought about it that way. I just thought it was for smart kids. And so I always internalized it as, oh, they don't see me as a smart kid. And I don't know that back then, I mean, we're talking about the 80s, it was all that developed.
What did the audition look like? Like, what did you have to try out?
I just wrote an application. Because, everything was very rudimentary back then. It's a small town. They don't have a formal process. Like, I know my kid, I got him into the talented and gifted at his school. It doesn't really mean anything because he's not in a specific class. He's just taking smart people classes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And when I look at the kids that were in it, I'm like, well, I could have just been the happy nerd. That would have been my role, the one that really studies hard at everything. Because there were kids like that in there. There was a jock. There was a funny kid. But I think I would have just been the nerd.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like if you had gotten in, I don't know, do you feel like if you had gotten in, you would have been, like, less motivated because you would have just been, like...
Maybe, because I would have been like, oh, look at me, I'm different, I'm better than, as opposed to, oh, I was deemed not better than, so that's going to motivate me.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they do that. It really...
Yeah.
And, like, what they base it on, too, is, I don't know.
Yeah, because for my kid, we did an application, and it just made him eligible to take different classes. Like because when what they were doing at my school is like you were basically forced into advanced classes, whereas now it's like you have the option to take the advanced classes. Yeah. And you're not all tag kids put together in a classroom, from one class to the next.
What's so interesting about starting a comedy career is, like, being away from those things mattering, because I'm in a room full of people. We're all signing up on the same open mic list. Mm-hmm. One of us has a master's degree. One of us never finished high school. One of us, like I'm meeting people that, I wouldn't have met other than doing this. And it kind of, like... it does kind of make it seem less important. There are people that have degrees, and then there's people that don't, and it just doesn't, have anything to do with where they are in the rankings for as comics.
Right.
You see the work ethic and you see all this other, the creativity and the drive, and you just kind of forget about the rest of it.
Yeah. It's well, I can't say it's a level playing field because the more you get into it, you realize that it isn't a level playing field at all.
It has its own biases, like everything.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how Holly got from Massachusetts to Austin.
Okay, so I had heard about Austin for the first time ever in January 2021 because one of my good friends moved out here for comedy, and I was feeling pretty, the home scene was feeling pretty dull. Nothing was quite opening up the way we wanted it to. There was still a lot of things closed, and it was like a sad winter of just nothing going on. And I remember I had wanted one of my friends to be on a sketch that I was producing. And I had messaged him, and he said, "I'm in Texas. I won't be able to make it." And I said, "What are you doing in Texas?" I was like, "What?" It's like, "Why would you go to, I'd never been to Texas." I was like, "Why are you going to Texas?" And he's like, "I'm in Austin. They have a really good scene right now." And he was like, you can get up 4 to 5 times a night. There's such and such shows. And I was like reading that, and I was like, oh my God, I need to go here. So I had booked myself a trip to Austin in February. My original trip was the week the freeze happened.
Oh, God.
So I was like, I'm so excited to go to Austin. I was ready. And then I get the email that all the hotels are shutting down and my flights. And I was so sad.
I was
like, calling the hotel. I was like, well, is there any way, you'll be open in, a couple of days? Like, I don't know. Right now we're boiling water. It was not looking good. And I was, looking, and I was like, of all the weeks I picked, so I was supposed to go that week, and I wanted my boyfriend at the time to go with me. We were both going to go. And then slowly, eventually, we started realizing that we were going down different paths. He wasn't as motivated to go to Austin as I was. He didn't really want to move. And so, eventually, so I rebooked the trip for April, and then we broke up about 2 weeks before that. He broke up with me, but it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was a very friendly breakup. It was very mutual. It wasn't this blindsided, oh my God type thing. I kind of knew it was gonna happen if our lives, I kind of could sense that our lives were going different directions. And then he was the one to do it, which, I felt better because I didn't have to. But, it was, I would say it's a more mutual breakup that I've been through. So then I booked a trip to Austin. I went to Austin, loved it. All this crazy stuff happened. I met Joe Rogan. I was like,
wow.
I was like, oh, this place is crazy. And then I moved here in June of 2021. So a couple of months went by where I was trying to move here and then trying to find a place, the whole transitionary period, quit my job. So then I really moved here because I knew the scene was picking up, and I liked the way it felt when I was here, and it really felt like this was the next move. If I really wanted to get serious about comedy, this seemed like a good place to be. And then 2 weeks after I moved here was when I got on Kill Tony.
Oh my gosh.
So it all happened really fast. That summer will probably be a summer I don't forget for a long time. It was there was this energy of we're all moving down here. We've all been this is the first summer where everything's really open. It was the freedom and the excitement of being in a new place and with meeting new people. We had so much fun that summer. That was, I still yeah, I still think a lot about that summer and like how cool it was and how cool everything felt. And yeah.
Huh. Well, I remember watching the clip of your Kill Tony appearance and just seeing him draw out all the names because he was trying to find a female comic.
Yeah, the odds.
Yeah, and then, it almost looked like he was, well, there was a female comic he originally drew that wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And then, he's drawing all these male names and then to land you and then just to have such a good, showing when you did your jokes.
It was, I rewatched it a little while ago and I just remembered like, oh yeah, he had called like 3 other women's names that all just happened to not be there. It was the craziest circumstance for me to get on, and it was just like, it was incredible. And then I got to do the secret show. I got offered that, and like I just remember like that day I had been feeling like confused, like did I make the right choice in leaving Boston to come here, and and then it sort of all just like came together, and I was just like, whoa, this is something I could have never experienced had I not left.
Yeah. What are some of the projects that you're working on these days? Because it seems like you've got a lot of varied interests. Besides stand-up, you've written sketches before, and you've written screenplays, they might have been for class, but I mean, you obviously have a writer's bent, but are there other projects that you're working on?
I mean, I've been pretty focused on stand-up. I've done some content writing. I was writing for a lifestyle blog, on and off. Yeah. That kind of stuff. I do want to get back into screenwriting because I do miss like creating characters, and like sketches were like very fun to make. Yeah. And I really want to get back into that. But right now, for the most part, I've just been writing stand-up. I haven't really written anything that like significant since that.
When you were going through the roast battle, were you surprised at how far you went, or did you always know that you had kind of that lethal touch?
So I had done a few Zoom roast battles back home, and I really enjoyed those. So, my first time being put on a roast battle here, I did like pretty well, and then my second roast battle, I really did like. I remember I was like sitting. I woke up the morning of the roast battle, and I'd already done some research at this point. I'd already researched the person and like wrote some things about them. It wasn't like it was my first time doing anything. Yeah. But I remember I woke up and I said, if you don't sit down and write all day, you're going to fail at this.
Oh my gosh. You're so hard on yourself.
I put this it was true. Yeah. It was like, you have all this information about the person, but you haven't connected the dots yet. And I did. I sat in a coffee shop and I just went through and just just did a bunch of just Google searches of, does he look like this guy? And, I just figured out, and I just kind of learned how to write under pressure like that. And I was really nervous about it because I didn't know like how the audience was going to respond. Yeah. And the response was like, they went really well. And like, I really like that feeling of being like, I don't even know if this is good. And then you go on stage and then it crushes. Like, I don't know. It's like, and then it gets like a really good reaction. And it's like, it just makes you rethink like, am I just not confident about like, like I was like, because I was like, yeah, this is probably decent. And then the audience is like, it's like, all right, I guess I'm not giving myself enough credit for.
Well, they must love the idea of a soft-spoken woman who's telling it like it is and saying, this is what, I can't think of a better way to say it, but this is what's shitty about this other person. Yeah,
there's definitely like a bias of like, of course she's gonna win because the audience is gonna take her side, So I mean that's something that I kind of have to acknowledge. Like, there probably is a degree of like it's a play on character of like what I look like and what I sound like. it definitely gives me an advantage. Like I can't deny that I have that advantage being like, oh, this tiny little girl saying these things. Like it definitely it definitely works in my favor. But I also put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
I don't really use it as a crutch. I know that it's gonna. That's why I like wearing like little cutesy outfits too, like wearing my little flower romper and then saying it, because I think it's even funnier like that.
Did becoming the roast champion open new doors for you?
I think that's honestly the most important thing that's happened since I've been in Austin, is discovering that niche of the roast battle. I think that's really where people started to kind of, where I started getting a reputation as a good comedy writer, was people seeing me on roast battle. So I really think that's given me like the best opportunities I've had here is from doing that.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know this, but when you're recognized for your writing skills, there's two coasts in the country that tend to like good writing skills.
New York and LA.
Yeah.
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 I actually did a roast battle in New York
Cool.
in October, and they go way harder. Here we have like, you do 5 jokes, In New York, they're like, all right, you're going to write 13 jokes.
Oh, wow.
And they do them like, they have 3 rounds. The first round is like back to back. You do a joke, they do a joke. There's a second round where it's like rapid fire, and you just go joke, 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 joke. Then they do the same thing. And I forget what the third round was, but it was hard.
Wow.
It was really challenging.
But
yeah.
you got pushed into a different, skill.
Oh yeah, no, I spent a lot of time on those jokes because, it was, I won, but I mean, if you listen to the tape, it's like, did I win? Because there were some jokes where the audience was just not into it. I had a few good pops, and then the rest of them were kind of, there was a lot of that, falling flat. But that's what New York is. It's leveling. It's a level up. This is going to be scary, but you know what? Let's try it.
Yeah, yeah. What are some things that you're excited about working on in the next, I don't know, few months?
So there's most likely, I don't know if I don't know if I can officially announce it. I think I can. I'm most likely going to be in the roast battle at South by Southwest this year.
That's amazing.
That's probably like the thing I'm the most excited about.
I think by the time this comes out, that may be, public information possibly.
I mean, I don't think it's private. I mean, I definitely got asked to do it,
Yeah.
so
That's awesome.
I haven't like officially been given like an opponent or anything yet, but hopefully that'll be coming up soon, so I can start, preparing.
Yeah.
Because I definitely want to give myself a lot of time to prepare
Yeah.
for this.
I have seen roast battles at South by Southwest because they used to have this group, and I don't know if you've studied like the whole history of the roast battles, but they have the Wave. They used to have the Wave, and it used to be Jeremiah Watkins, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but they would like in between the roasts, they would like do these little mini sketches.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they were wild, but I don't think they do the Wave anymore in between the roast battles. But I remember them being crazy at South by. So
Yeah.
it's a fun time.
No, that sounds
Yeah.
cool.
Well, congratulations. That's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
Any other projects? Like that? Cooking?
I mean, what month is it? It's February, so I mean, mostly just doing shows, getting established. I really want to go out to Chicago at some point this year, do a trip out there. I submitted for the Boston Comedy Festival. I don't know. I haven't heard back yet, so I don't know if I'll be doing that. But other than that, there's not really. Just doing whatever I can every day to get stage time and get more experience, and yeah.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I mean, we covered a lot about my life.
Anything else we need to know about your dad?
I don't know why he came up so much. Just, I don't know. I guess those deep-seated childhood memories. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been here for about 2 years now, and I've learned a lot about what it takes to be a comedian. I've seen the like the highs and lows of experienced the highs and lows of like, oh, this is what it's like to actually sacrifice something for this, rather than just be like, oh, I live at home and I have a day job and I can just do this at night. Where this is like, oh no, I'm in it now. Mm-hmm. Like this is. I'm here for just this.
Yeah.
So I definitely experienced a lot of that. I've had a lot of just worked the craziest jobs just in order to be able to be here and do this.
Right.
But yeah, I've definitely learned like a lot about comedy and the lifestyle and the art form and the craft since moving here, and I'm always gonna take that with me whenever I go next.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I have a closing question for you.
Okay.
One word to describe your future.
Ooh. One word to describe my future. I'm going to be positive and say, there's a word I'm looking for and I can't think of it. I want to say vibrant. I don't know why, but I want to say vibrant. I want to say like has a lot of energy and I don't know, like there's good things, good vibes. I don't know. I think.
I like it.
Yeah, I want to say that.
Cool. Well, thank you for helping us out with the articles too. Appreciate having people to help.
Yeah, no,
it's a lot of work.
I like writing them. It's fun. I've gotten to like learn about different parts of the scene and different people, and I enjoy it. So thanks for having me as a writer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents Holly Johnston. Tell us where we can find you on social media and let us know the upcoming projects or shows.
Okay, you can find me on Instagram at holly.johnston_. Holly Johnston was already taken. YouTube is just my name. It's Johnston. Some people type in Johnson. Yeah, I have some stuff on there, some roast battle clips, some stand-up clips. I haven't really broken into the TikTok yet. But and I don't really use Twitter. So mostly, Instagram and YouTube are the two biggest ones, I would say.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Holly got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Holly Johnston. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.